Thanks, everyone. And we have a lovely group of panelists who I'm going to introduce when it's time for the panelists' presentations and discussion. We'd also like to get to know our audience a little bit very quickly. We are having some interactive activities in this session, and this first one is meet the participants. If you are not familiar with Slido, it is a live survey that you can do online together. You don't need to download any software. You can scan the QR code with your phone or tablet, and it'll take you to the survey where you can write the answers. I'm also pasting the link in the chat as well in case you don't have a phone or camera handy. So, it might take folks a minute to get set up, but when you're ready, our question is, we are curious where you're joining us from today. So what city or country are you from? Lots of Canada and the US, Korea, Australia, Russia, Japan, awesome. Wow, we have participants from many time zones, so I'm really glad you could all join. So we were just doing an interactive activity. What do you hope to learn from this session? If you are still, oops, sorry, go back. Okay, we've got a couple. Confidence. Yes. The more you know, the more confident you become. The more you practice and talk about it, the more confident you become. Presentation skills, you're in the right place. And making interesting presentations. Yeah, it's important to grab attention of your audience and make it easy for people to understand. Reduce anxiety, yeah. Yeah, and Q&A, like learning how to respond to Q&A. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna move on so we're not too far behind, but you can continue entering this and I'll be able to view your responses later. Thank you for doing that. Here's a brief overview of what we'll do in the next hour-ish. We've done introductions and I have a couple more meeting details to go over. Then we'll hear from our 3 award-winning panelists in giving oral and poster presentations, and we'll have time for you to do questions and have a discussion after all the panelists have presented. In the last half hour, we have an interactive activity where everyone can be the judge of some examples of posters and slides, and this will help reinforce some practical skills that we've been talking about up until then. Some quick reminders that we are recording this and we are sharing it as a resource for anyone that would like it on the PICES YouTube channel. After the session, we will be sharing that, and after probably next week, once we get it posted, we'll be emailing out a link to this as well as any other resources we think we might want to include for you. Your mics are automatically muted. Please raise your hand if you have a verbal question, and you can always enter something in the chat and we will have people monitoring that. I'll start by going over some English operating rules and best practices. We have an interdisciplinary and international audience today, so we're able to practice live what we're learning. Some of these will come up again, of course, but to help us all prepare for this meeting, here are some things to keep in mind to help everyone. Speak clearly and slower, about 10% slower. Avoid indirect expressions and explain acronyms. Use short sentences and simple grammar. Repeat your key messages. Be patient and respectful, and ask for understanding or clarification. Great. Okay, panelists. I'm very pleased to have our panelists. We have Catherine Dale, Hannah Matsubara, and Denise Koskunner. Our panelists are all presenters at PICES annual meetings in the past, where they have won the Early Career Professional Presentation Awards. Welcome, panelists, and thank you so much for being here. I'll introduce each panelist before the talk, and then we will hold the questions from the audience until question period at the very end. Our first speaker is Catherine Dale, or Kat. Kat is a postdoc researcher at East Carolina University, working with Dr. Rebecca Ash. She studies how an array of fish off the west coast of North America balance their spawning geographic distribution versus their phenology. In general, she views herself as a data scientist working on the movement and spatial ecology of animals like larval fish, eels, and birds, and people. She received her Bachelor of Science from the University of Miami and her PhD from University of California, Santa Cruz. Okay, thank you. Welcome, Kat. Now I'll let you take it from here.
Okay,
I
great.
will stop my screen share.
Alrighty. Sounds. Hey, hi everyone. My name is Kat. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, I am a postdoc at East Carolina University. That is in North Carolina, and I work on larval fish. And I'm here today because I was awarded the Best Biological Oceanography Committee ECOP oral presentation at the 2024 PICES meeting. And I really love data visualization and thinking about how do we take large sources of data and making them into useful figures and tools. So today I'm going to focus on two topics, and the first is thinking about universal design principles. So how to make your presentation, your oral presentation, work for everyone. I'm a really firm believer that there are lots of tools that we can use to make our presentations effective for both your lab group, right, a small group, all the way up to a very international PICES audience. And then the second topic I'll talk about is PowerPoint tips and tools. So how do you actually implement those design principles? So like I said, communicating concepts using multiple methods, I think really helps everyone. And there's multiple ways that we communicate our science in an oral presentation. Those include writing things on your slide. And my main tips here are to write each slide's main idea as a complete sentence. So we have one on this screen. Communicating concepts using multiple methods helps everyone. That is a complete sentence. That is this slide's main idea. And then elsewhere, using short phrases or bullet points, but never paragraphs just thrown onto your screen. The second way we communicate our information is to obviously speak it. This is an oral presentation. So everyone, but especially native English speakers, we want to think about slowing down and enunciating and practicing. So I encourage everyone to make sure that you have those slide timings down, that your presentation is the right length, but try not to memorize your presentation if you can, because making it feel more conversational will help to engage your audience better. And then anytime you feel like you're going to say or ah or think about trying to take a breath instead. And that pause will help everyone take in your information a little bit better. And then finally, we visualize our data in these slides. So whenever we're thinking about visualizations and graphs, we're going to be using really large text on our screens, using thick lines and color when it's effective, along with clear access labels. And then presenting info in really small pieces, because we all have short attention spans, and presenting pieces of information one at a time will help everyone with the flow of your story. So you'll see that a lot in my presentation today. I use a lot of animations to just put little pieces at a time. So here are some examples. So this is a slide that I made, and we're talking about the benefits of flight. So I have some animations that appear to talk about some of those benefits. And the ideas that I want to draw your attention to on this slide are first that we have a complete sentence as the title, that I then leverage these short phrases to aid with my speaking. So if I was giving this presentation, I might read out each of these short phrases as they come up on the screen so people can read them or they can listen to me. And then finally, I have these little drawings and icons to reinforce these topics in a visual way. So I'm using speaking, writing, and visualization all in this somewhat simple slide. Here's another example from the presentation I gave at PICES. So this is what appears first on this slide, this question to remind people what my initial research questions were. And then I bring in everything else. And this is a bit of a confusing graph. So some things that I use to help people were, again, complete sentences. I wrote out my main idea, my main result. I use these little icons that add continuity with my slides so people don't necessarily have to remember the words. I use thematic colors for these different life history groups that I'm discussing. And then I use the helper access label. So I'm not forcing people to interpret what these numbers really mean. They can just look at these arrows and understand what's happening if a value is further up or further down on that y-axis. So the three things I want you to remember: think about how do you write effectively on your slides, how are you speaking these concepts, and then how are we visualizing your data? So write, speak, visualize. Okay, we're going to move on now. So how do you implement those three topics? I'm going to walk you through some of my favorite PowerPoint tips and tools. And if you've used PowerPoint, you should have these ribbons at the top of the application. So I'm going to walk you through each of the different ribbons and draw your attention to some tools that I really like. So the first that I'll talk about is PowerPoint's robust icon and illustration library. So you'll find this under the Insert tab. It's this little button called Icons. And when you click on that, you'll be brought to this library of different emojis and illustrations and icons. So you can quickly add some of those easy visualizations into your slides. Also on the Insert tab is this little tool called the Curve tool. It's really what we call a Bezier curve. And these can be used to create surprisingly complex vector drawings. So a vector drawing is something you can zoom into indefinitely and it will never get blurry. It's not pixelated like a regular image. And you'll find this again on the Insert tab under Shapes, in addition to a few other locations. And you're looking for that Curve tool. And these are all examples of icons that I've created using the Bezier curve tool. So these are all made in PowerPoint, just with that curve tool. So I'll walk you through a little bit about how this works. So you found the curve tool, you draw yourself some little shape here. If you right click on that shape, you'll see a button called Edit Points. And if you click on that, that will bring you to an option to you'll see all the little points that define that shape. You can click and drag on those points to move things around or change the point type, delete, open the path, etc. So this is how I created those drawings. And here are some examples. These are all drawings that made it into peer-reviewed publications and/or National Science Foundation grant applications. So I've used this tool in very professional contexts. So I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in making some of your own visualizations in like a really easy way. All right, moving on to the Design tab. So one easy way to make presentations your own and just spice them up in a way that's a little different from everyone else is to go to the Design tab, click this button next to those colored slides, and it will bring you to a menu with some different font and color palettes. So this is an easy way to just add a little personality to your slides. All right. Hopefully you've all seen the transitions tab. We've all seen the really fun transitions where the slides bounce around and move in kind of crazy ways. The only transition that I would encourage you to potentially check out is the morph transition. So this is a very cool transition that basically sort of changes slides and helps guide your story. To get the best results with this tool, you'll duplicate a slide, you'll move some of your objects around or add a few objects, and Morph will automatically move, resize, fade in and out objects that appear here. So I'll show you an example of that also. So this is a slide I made about eels and how they're moving into rivers in a few of our East Coast states in North America. And I used the morph tool to zoom in on this New Jersey story. So let's just watch that one more time. So morph is just leading us into the next part of the story. I'm focusing on New Jersey here. Really simple animation that I just felt like helped guide the story, right? It adds a little continuity to these slides. So it doesn't have to be anything dramatic, but it's a useful transition when it works. Okay, and then finally, thinking about animation. So this is another one that I'm sure we've all seen, animations where objects bounce in and out and do crazy motions. I would really strongly encourage you, just by default, if you will use animations, use the appear or the fade. Other animation types can be distracting and really should only be used in specific circumstances. And then if you add animations, you can leverage this animation pane to lengthen or shorten things, combine them together, or change the order. So here's an example of multiple animations. So this is a slide where I'm talking about how marine fish produce a lot of larvae, and then the adults head on out of there, and these larvae are left to fend for themselves and have ecological challenges. So you'll see that I use a directional animation as well as some fade in and out ones. And then finally, I would encourage you to organize the objects on your slide easier. So if you click on any object, you'll have these additional menus that you can use to align objects, center them all, distribute evenly, horizontally, things like that. So don't work harder, work smarter, and use these align tools to help you make your slides look really nice and organized. Okay, and that's it for me. Happy to take questions when we get to the Q&A, and here's my contact info if you'd like to reach out.
Thank you so much, Kat. That was wonderful. Those are great examples and tips on how to create your custom icons and images. Those are visuals are really valuable to have in presentations. I'm just going to... Okay, we're back. Thank you. Okay, so the next presenter panelist we have is Hannah Matsubara. She served as co-chair of the Advisory Panel on Early Career Ocean Professionals since 2022. She's recently defended her doctoral dissertation, which examined the relationship between sustainability of fisheries resource use and gender integration in the fisheries sector. Hannah received the Best Poster Presentation Award from the Human Dimensions Committee at PICES 2024 annual meeting, as well as the Best Oral Presentation Award by the Human Dimensions Committee at PICES in 2022. Thank you so much, Hannah, and I will let you set up your screen.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for your kind introduction. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then let me begin my presentation. So thank you very much for having me today. I am Hannah Matsubara. I'm working at the University of Tokyo in Japan as a project academic specialist. And my presentation is especially for participants who use English as second or foreign language. And let me show my, yes, point. Okay. And the presentation title is First Time to Provide Research Presentation in English, Tips for Preparing Your Presentation as a Non-Native English Speaker. I have grown up in Japan and I am non-native English speaker. However, we non-native English speakers must also share research outcomes clearly in English in interdisciplinary settings. When I prepared for my first presentation at PICES conference, my colleagues and supervisor kindly gave me very helpful advice. So today I would like to share those tips with you on how to prepare slides, notes, and scripts, and also would like to share some useful English phrases that may help you for your preparation. In my presentation, I will touch on both oral and poster presentation as a non-native English speaker. So let me start with oral presentation. When preparing a slide, it is often helpful to use more visuals such as graphs, figures, and photos as they make your presentation more visually clear. However, it is also very important to include key sentence on each slide because it will help you convey your main message even if you forget some English expression during your talk. And some scripts and notes can be also very helpful to prepare your presentation. And we do not need to use complicated grammar or advanced vocabulary since simple and clear words are often the most effective. To show some examples, I have prepared two different introductions for the presentation like this. So let me read them aloud. First one is like this. Good morning, everyone. You know, when most people think of the open ocean, they picture a vast blue desert, endless water with not much going on. But of course, we marine biologists know it's more like a bustling metropolis where the tiniest resident, from plankton to larval fish, can set the rule of survival. Today, I would like to take you on a dive into one of those hidden neighborhoods and show you how its residents are quietly reshaping the way we understand ocean ecosystem. And second one is like this. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. When we look at the ocean, it may seem empty and quiet, but in fact, it is full of life. Even very small organisms, such as plankton and young fish, play important roles. In my presentation today, I will share our recent findings on how these organisms influence the health of marine ecosystem. I think the first one sounds more sophisticated and fluent, but the second one uses only simple grammar and vocabulary. I would like to call the first one as native-like English and the second one as international English. I believe we non-native English speakers do not need to aim for native-like English because it can be very challenging for us, and in most cases, it is not necessary. International English, with simple grammar, clear words, and direct expressions, allows us to deliver our message effectively at international conference. And I believe this is also important thing for native speakers as well, because this kind of international English with simple and clear vocabulary and grammar will be easier for non-native English speakers to catch and understand. So this international English will also help native English speakers to deliver your message to a wider audience, I think. And it can be also helpful to highlight what you personally find the most interesting in your study. Because sometimes sharing what you truly find exciting gives a stronger impression than speaking perfect English. And during the Q&A session, after your oral presentation, sometimes it's difficult for us to catch the question. At the international conferences, it is perfectly polite to ask for clarification, so I am sharing some example phrases that you can use for when you ask for some qualifications. You can say, for example, like, I'm so sorry, could you please repeat the question? Or you can ask, like, just to make sure I understand, is there a question about this? And you can also ask, like, thank you for the question. If I understand correctly, you're asking about this. So I hope these phrases may help you during Q&A session, and these are tips for oral presentation. So let me move on to the poster session. So this is an example poster I prepared for a PICES conference last year. But one challenge of poster session is that you do not always know when someone stops by your poster, you may not know his or her expertise and how deep that person is interested in your poster. So my recommendation is to start your presentation with 2 minutes brief explanation. In this 2-minute talk, you can briefly explain your research objective, methodology, and one or two main findings with the most interesting or exciting point of your study. After this short introduction, visitors usually ask questions or share comments, and that is when deeper discussion begins. And here are the example templates on how you can start your presentation. So if someone stops by your poster, then you can say, "Hi, would you like me to explain my poster?" Then that person may say, "Yes, please." Then you can start your 2 minutes brief presentation with saying, "Thank you. In this study, I aimed to examine this research objective, and I used this methodology because of this reason. And the result indicated this or these main findings, and the most interesting part of this study is like this. And please make sure not to use too much technical terms because your audience may come from different academic field because if the conference is the interdisciplinary conference. And the audience may ask may say like, "Thank you for your explanation. I have a question about this." And sometimes question can be very technical if that person comes from the same academic field, but the question can be also very general about research objective or the discussion part. And I believe the best part, the most valuable part of the presentation is interaction. I believe good science can be built on the exchange of ideas, and that is the true benefit of interdisciplinary conferences. You may even prepare some questions to ask the audience, for example, about methodology, the advice on methodologies or feedbacks for results. And please do not forget to keep a notebook and a pen with you for taking notes and ensures you do not lose valuable comments and advice from audience. Finally, I would like to emphasize that PICES is friendly community for non-native English speakers. More than half of PICES member countries are non-native English countries. So please feel relaxed and step out of your comfort zone and enjoy interactions. For me as well, it is sometimes challenging, but I have always felt warm support from the PICES community. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. As a native English speaker, speaking at international conferences can take some awareness. It's more than simplifying your words because we have some complex ideas to share, but focusing on simple grammar, avoiding metaphors and indirect expressions, and being concise can help you become more clear and direct in general in your communication, which is usually a good thing when we're communicating science. Our next panelist is Denise Koss-Kunner. She is a second-year master's student at the University of British Columbia Institute for, sorry, this one. Institute for the Fisheries and Oceans. Her master's thesis explores the ecology of nearshore zooplankton communities and the use of rapid image processing and AI in zooplankton ecology. Denise was a recipient of the Best Poster Presentation Award from the T-Code Committee at PICES 2024. Thank you, Denise. I will let you have the screen.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Denise. I am a master's student at the University of British Columbia. Just wanted to start with a land acknowledgement, something that we like to do here in BC. So University of British Columbia is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. And I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the lands wherever you might be joining us from today. So about me, I did my bachelor in pharmacology from McGill, and then I worked for a bit, and now I'm doing my master's at the University of British Columbia. I presented a poster at PICES 2024. It was my first ever conference and still is the only conference that I've ever been to. And yeah, I have a lot of other hobbies as well. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about what I thought helped make my first conference experience a success. And so I thought I'd break it up into three different categories. So what to do before you go, what to focus on while you're there, and what to think about after you leave. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the confidence and nerves and anxiousness of it all. I know a few of you guys mentioned that in what you wanted us to focus on. I think something I like to remind myself is it's okay to be scared. It means you care a lot about what you're presenting. So it's not a bad thing. And sometimes, it's best to embrace it and use it to help motivate you. So, the things that I wanted to focus on before you go is, in general, what are your goals at the conference? So, speaking for myself, I wanted to understand what a conference was like, learn more about different people's science as well as their communication styles, and really meet people. So, when I was presenting my poster and creating my poster, I really tried to keep those things in mind. And specifically identifying the goal of my poster was very helpful as well. So in my case, I was at the very beginning of my research, and so I wanted information and feedback on the idea for my project, the preliminary work that I had done so far, and to identify potential collaborators. So while I was making my poster, I really kept those goals in mind. Um, Another thing is to, yeah, put yourself out there and ask for help. So there are definitely a lot of people around you that have a lot more experience. There will always be people with more experience, and you know, it's very useful to get feedback before you go as well. So building an effective poster. So this is the poster that I presented last year. One of the things that I found interesting was, I was thinking about before I went, what was the most interesting thing about my project? And I thought it was, oh, we use citizen scientists, and I thought that that was very interesting. And when I asked around and talked to other people who knew my project, they all said that it was the imaging part, like the actual images that I take of zooplankton, that they were like, that's what pulls people in, that's what makes people interested. And that's not something that I would have thought about on my own. But because of that feedback, I really incorporated a lot of those images into the poster to try and bring people in and make them interested. Another thing that I would really suggest to do is something to what the other presenters have talked about is think about an elevator pitch. So what I did before I went to Pisces last year was I wrote a few different elevator pitches out and by elevator pitch, I mean a short 30-second, if you meet someone for the first time and they say, "What is your project about?" or "What is your presentation about?" what you're going to say in a very short period of time to get their attention. And what I did is I wrote a few different versions out and asked my supervisor, I asked my colleagues. I really tried to crowdsource lots of ideas. And that helped me to refine my elevator pitch or my introduction. And yeah, and I thought that it was very helpful because when people came up to me, I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I had it practiced, so it came out smoothly, and I already had in mind non-native English speakers. So, while you were there, so this is a picture of me at the conference last year. The poster session was on Halloween, so I dressed up as a copepod. Um, and I actually thought that this was a very helpful thing to do. It made people interested to come up and chat with me, and it was like a good icebreaker. So I would recommend, I mean, maybe dressing up is not always the correct or best way to go about doing it, but having something like I noticed people had different candies from their home countries that they were giving out, or uh, different maybe little flyers with a QR code, something that you can draw people in with, I found was very helpful because someone would see me from across the thing and say, "Wow, I really like your costume." And I was like, "Thank you so much. It's actually one of my study species. Let me tell you about my poster." Yeah. And another thing that I would like to suggest you do is, I mean, of course, attend as much of the conference as you can, learn from other people, but don't be afraid to advertise yourself. So with the poster session last year, at least being at the end of the conference, there was lots of time where I was meeting new people, learning about what they were doing, asking questions, and every time I always said, "By the way, I'm presenting a poster. This is what it's about. Here's my elevator pitch. Please come in and see it." I also, before the conference, identified a few key people who I really wanted to come and see my poster, and I sought them out at the conference and said, "I would really like you to come and see my poster if you have the time." And I think it worked quite well. A lot of those folks did come by and see the poster, and we got a chance to have a more in-depth chat about my project and keeping in mind the goals I had, which was I wanted to get feedback on the direction my project was going. It was extremely helpful. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned before, have your elevator pitch down. Make sure it's non-native English speaker friendly. So test it on other folks who are also maybe non-native English speakers and they can give you feedback. So after you leave, the hard part is done. You can relax a little bit. And the biggest thing that I would suggest you do is follow up with the people that you met. Again, with your goals in mind, think about um, how these folks can maybe help you further those goals and keep those connections going. And also just really reflect on what went well, what could have been improved on, because the best sort of way to learn is just by doing, and you will get lots of feedback and learn a lot while you're there. So be kind to yourself, make sure you celebrate once you're done, and yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
What do you hope to learn from this session? Thank you so much. That was wonderful. One moment.
While Devin pulls up her slides, we would love if anyone has any questions for the panelists to brainstorm them we might have a few minutes before we dive into our interactive part of the exercise. So please either put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we will do our best to get to your questions. I do have a question to kick us off. Oh, Tammy, never mind. You go.
New platform. I have trouble reading my hand. Okay. I have lots of questions, but I'll start with one. Hannah, really appreciate your presentation, and it was really interesting to hear. I was wondering, when you watch presentations from us English speakers and we're trying to share our science and our knowledge with non-English speakers, what is the one thing that frustrates you when you're listening to a presentation? You're like, oh, I wish that person, I suspect maybe would speak slower. So I was trying to sort of flip everything you were saying to how I could make mine better. What would you give me advice if I was going to build a presentation?
Thank you very much. Okay, one thing comes up to my mind is that when someone makes jokes and it contains indirect metaphors and everyone laugh, but I don't get it. I feel excluded. So one of my requests to make a joke clearer, even for people come from other country. And also one more thing, scientific terms are always easy communication tool for everyone because this is scientific community. So yes, even if the terms is technical in the presentation session, sometimes it works, but that kind of indirect expression, including some cultural context, may exclude some people.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I don't think I would have thought of that one, so that's really helpful. Great. See if anybody else has any questions. Go ahead, Hannah. I cut you off, so there's nobody else.
Let's give it a moment for people to raise hands or use the chat, and then I'll jump in if no one else has a question. Okay, I see a hand. Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Njuki, and thank you very much for the panelists. I really learned a lot, more than I actually thought. I have one question. Denise, and I really appreciate what you said, the reflection. So I recently attended a conference, my very first international conference, and I realized that I am very anxious, and the anxiety only lasts for about 1 to 2 slides. And then my sensei said that introduction is very important because you are introducing your presentation, your research. So people need to understand well. And I tried to take deep breaths to avoid the like the other panelists who presented. And is there anything or any advice you'd give? Because for me, the anxiety lasts only for a few seconds. And I think that is very important, the introduction part. And then after that, I am calm, then I'm able to present my slides well, my results and all that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I also do get very anxious presenting as well. Yeah, I mean, I think my advice for that would be to understand that, again, anxiety is okay. And sometimes like trying to fight it and being like, I'm just going to do my best to not be anxious in this moment is not, at least for me, is not what works best. But to trust my anxiety and say, okay, this is going to help me focus. And, if you know that it's only the first few slides, maybe you can, in the first few slides, do something that you're really familiar with. So open with a personal anecdote or something that, before you get into the meat of the subject or the most dense part of the subject, you can really give yourself time to warm up. Yeah.
All right, Kat, go ahead.
Yes, I will also chime in here. So one thing that could help you is just acknowledging that to the audience. So this is something my postdoctoral advisor does. So she gets very nervous and she just acknowledges it to the audience. She says, I'm a little nervous. I'm really excited to share my research with you all. I might need to restart if needed. And sometimes she has to just go back to the beginning and restart and recollect herself. But she does acknowledge to everyone that she's nervous, and everyone then feels like, yeah, we all feel the same way. So it's totally normal, and we all feel nervous when we get up there. So acknowledging that to the group makes the collective feel a little bit more together.
Thank you, Kat. Hannah, did you have anything you wanted to add to this question? I feel like everyone probably has some good tips. No? Okay. We might have time for one more question before we move on to the exercise, if anyone else has a question for our speakers. Kat, I actually had a quick question for you, and forgive me if you did cover this, but you gave some great tips on visuals, etc. And I know there's a lot of tools out there, but do you recommend one tool, or do you have a favorite tool for choosing color palettes, especially colorblind friendly color palettes? And again, to you, Kat, but also to our other panelists, if you all have good tips.
Yes, absolutely. So I will drop a link in the chat, but one that I really like for ocean science is an R package called CM Ocean. It's also available, I believe, for MATLAB. But it's a great package that includes a lot of different palettes that are specific for ocean data. So there's things like for depth or for salinity and changes in the current directions. So I really like that palette choice. And what's also nice about it is that a lot of the palettes are what we call visually uniform, so that the colors change at an equal rate, which helps also with visualization. So I will drop a link to that one in the chat.
Great. Any of our other panelists have any tools they want to recommend? Feel free, but no pressure. I'll say Color Brewer was a favorite one of mine in grad school. So I'll drop that one in the chat, but the more tools, the merrier, I suppose. But I'll turn it back over to Devin and Amy, I believe, to explain the next part of our activity. Thank you all again for the wonderful presentations, and we're excited to engage you all and put your new skills to the test.
Thank you. Thanks for those great questions and answers. Next, we're having a learning activity that Amy will be leading. And we are, I'll just note, running a little bit behind time. And so we will try and shorten the exercise and get finished on time. I am going to put us in breakout rooms at some point. If you get lost and can't find your way back to the main meeting, please rejoin. As we practiced earlier, you can rejoin using the invite link. That's all I'll say, and I'll let Amy explain what we'll do.
Excellent. Great. Well, thanks everybody and panelists. Oh man, those were some great presentations. Kat's technical tools and Hannah's oral speaking suggestions. And then Denise's effective poster building and the Copepod costume. That was so good. So what a great spread of tools. And I think we've all been able to learn quite a bit already. So now we're just going to sort of stretch our judging muscles a little bit and focus on science posters. And we're just going to go through a bit of an exercise of judging posters from the lens of a conference judge. So Devin, if you could just advance the slide. Perfect. So just a preface before we get into the activity in our breakout rooms, just a little behind the scenes look into what sort of a general science presentation judging criteria looks like. So the real focus that the judges are looking for in a great poster or presentation is focus on content and scientific merit. You know, a clear purpose, accurate and supported data, thorough research, original and innovative ideas, and especially, let's hope it's a relevant topic to whatever the conference is. Visual design, and this one for me is an easy one to critique because it's sort of, and we'll see as we go through the judging score sheet. It gives you a easy way to say, is it there, is it not? But we're looking for layout and a good flow of the information, appealing visuals. Is there something that's catching an eye to pull people into your poster? Are the use of graphics relevant? And how's the readability from font to, have you made a mistake to forget to add edges or a border around your poster? So you've popped it in a frame and suddenly some of your information is missing. So your presentation style. This one is going to be tricky to be grading when we're looking at the posters in our activity. So there is a presentation section on the score sheet. Feel free to, we'll skip it over, but you'll see what I mean when we get there. But for judges, you know, critiquing a presentation, they're looking for clear language, engaging style, and a confident explanation. And then there's the technical details of a poster. Is it properly cited? Is the data presented in a clear way? And is there logical conclusions supported by data? So Devin, please just advance to the next slide there. Great. So we are going to, as I said, sort of stretch our judging muscles here. We're going to break out into groups that will all be placed in, and we'll work together to judge and score samples of 2 scientific posters. And we'll rate each of the judging criteria from 1 to 5, and we'll use a fillable PDF sheet to record the scores. And please, if you have time, if your group has time, feel free to add some comments in there. So each breakup group will have a moderator that will sort of go through the flow of the scoring sheet. So I'd suggest that as a group, you start with 1 poster at a time. So start with poster 1 or poster 2. So do 1 at a time. Don't try to do them at the same time. That might get a little bit complicated. But take them in and, you know, spark some discussion about what's working on the poster, what's not working, with all the things that we've learned from these awesome presentations that we've just got to listen in on. And then the moderators will sort of lead through the judging criteria. And as a group, you can decide on a score between 1 and 5. If your camera's on, awesome. Hold up your hand, or, you know, throw a 2, throw a 5, throw a hard 0. But if your camera's not on, just add your vote into the chat, and then the moderator will sort of take majority rules and fill in a score. And this will condense it a little bit. This is truly just to flex our judging muscles and get that sort of insider information, but we'll take maybe 5-7 minutes to do this activity, and then we'll come back as a group and just have a quick review of the scores. Okay, so that being said, Devin, if you can send us all into breakout groups, let's see if we can do this on the technical side.
Okay, enjoy everyone. And I think you will be asked to or sent to your room. And co-hosts, please join manually into the group number that you're leading. Everyone will be back in just a second.
Awesome. It was
Okay.
a whirlwind. There's a lot to read. And I mean, it's I think valuable to see sort of what a judging score sheet might look like from the other side. And of course, we can spend more time with these things sort of post-workshop. But thanks everybody for sort of stretching your judging muscles there in the little bit of time we had to fly through that activity. Devin, if you could just pop to the next slide. Yes, okay, so here we have poster 1 and poster 2 side by side in very small, so we can't really read. But if, you know, I'm not sure if any of the work or breakout groups had time to finish their scoring. Yeah, no, so the plan was to share your scorecards back with me, but I know in our group we did not get through even half of the first poster, so let's just chat through it. I think from what we know now, because we're all experts, because we had those amazing panel presentations, we can clearly make some judging calls here on these 2 posters. But bigger picture, let's just talk about what posters are for at a conference. And the panelists touched on this, the fact that a poster, it's a networking tool and it's a communication tool. Treat it like a conversation starter. And I think that was sort of a lot of ideas coming from our panelists, that it's truly, its purpose is to attract attention and then spark more formal discussions. And I think Hannah had that good suggestion to start sort of a higher level, short conversation, like a 2-minute chat. And then our more deeper conversation is going to come from that. But the poster is truly a visual abstract of your project. It's to draw folks in and provide essential context of what you did and why you did it. And the poster isn't the talk. You are the talk. You are the engagement. But posters can be certainly used as a wonderful networking tool. So we won't check the score sheets, but just on a high level, I think we can see, comparing the 2 posters, there's one that burns our eyeballs a little bit. Poster 1, terribly hard to read on that starry sky background. Even just from the title alone, I have no idea what this project is about. The guinea pig having a spa day on the scale. I think it's getting its hair brushed. Very bizarre. Compared to poster number 2, from a distance, that big visual, the imagery of the shark and the ray in the middle of the poster. The layout is tidy. There's a flow. Our group didn't have a chance to dive into the content of the poster, but if we're just going on visual scores, I think there's a clear winner here. So Devin, if you could just pop through to the next slide. Hey, we get to give out a certificate to the poster winner for our training session tonight. It's this beautiful visual, bit of a masterpiece, and it fits right in alongside with those awesome posters we saw from our panelists and their examples that they gave us tonight. So thanks everybody for stretching your judging muscles a little bit, and we'll just flow through the rest of the time we have here.
Thanks so much, Amy, and apologize for running a little bit short, but we'll send out some resources to you later next week. I hope that was helpful activity for everyone. I know even though you didn't get to score something, but to see some judging criteria and start thinking about it can reinforce the ideas that we're talking about. And so I'm just going to take a few minutes to wrap up. I've put together this short, I've tried to organize and summarize some of the main themes that we've talked about on one slide here. And an overarching theme that I see is to state your main ideas in different ways, using speech, writing, visuals, and interactions, which we've touched on with the posters, and making connections and having discussions with your with colleagues or scientists or your audience. And including all of these different methods, you're more likely to reach a diverse audience and are building in repetition of the key ideas. I will, I'll talk it through really quickly. So the light bulb in the center is the main idea. I try to use good visuals on this to practice what I'm trying to teach. And then we have different colors of icons, speech writing, visuals, and interaction. And the speech is what you say in your presentation. In oral presentations, it is what you're talking through on your slides. In a poster, it is what you're saying to the individuals that you're talking to about your poster. And the writing part is the words that you put on your slide or your poster. So people are hearing and they can read, and then we have visuals. Visuals without any language in them. So things like images, icons, pictures, graphics, all things that can represent your idea in an image. And last, there's discussions and questions. So this is the interaction part with your audience. It can be question and answers at the end of your presentation talk. It's a big part of having a poster session and engaging people walking by. And a great outcome of conferences is often making connections with people and building collaborations on them for future and having a deeper kind of conversation with people you wouldn't normally perhaps. And so I like that interaction piece is important as well. Okay, that is our summary. And I would just like to acknowledge that the earlier disruption we had and send a really deep apology for that. We're learning to keep this meeting safe. We've been able to change some settings for the meeting, and it's another learning opportunity for our learning. So thank you so much for your patience with that, and big apologies. Thank you everyone for attending. The panelists, participants, co-organizers, it's been so lovely to have you, and we've heard some really great things. We have this feedback questionnaire if you have a minute. We're not quite at end time. If you have a minute to fill it out, there's a QR code here to scan. You can also get that link, which I wish I could post in the chat. I'll go back. And then just some information about the advisory panel on science communication with PICES. I put contacts for the co-chairs, one of which Tammy is here. And then my contact information to the PICES Secretariat is below as well. So I will end there and give you a minute to fill out the questionnaire and any last comments from co-organizers.
Thank you, Devin. And thank you again to everyone for coming back despite the troubling circumstances earlier. We're really grateful that also our wonderful presenters delivered their presentations flawlessly. I don't know about you, but I started to become more engrossed in the whole reason we were here, which is great. I'm sorry that our interactive exercise was cut a little bit short, but as we said, we're really here for the tips and tricks of these award-winning speakers. So that was great to have. And we will be following up with some resources afterwards so that you can apply some of these skills within your lab or science group. Practice presentations with each other, maybe go through a checklist of some of the tips you've learned here. So this is just the beginning. Part of learning is reinforcing. So we highly recommend that you all go to practice this further once you return to your locations from this screen. And I did put the link to the form in the chat, and we will also share it via email afterwards. So, but obviously content, while it's fresh, is much appreciated.
Thanks, Anna. And that survey is anonymous, so please give us your full thoughts. We're really appreciative of your participation and your feedback. And just one more time, thank you, everyone. We hope this has been helpful for you, and safe travels back to your time zones, whatever time it is for you, and we'll be in touch with sharing some materials and this recording of the video. Thank you, everyone.